having had Ahmed with us tonight, it's a huge honor, considering what is happening in Gaza, what is happening to Ahmed, what happened to Ahmed family. I'm going to introduce Ahmed very briefly, just with a conversation we had coming from the train station. Ahmed, as some of you may know, is co-founder of We Are Not Numbers. We were talking about that project a bit more, and we always hear in the Western media this idea of giving voice to those who don't have a voice. Remember that this is also a very propaganda, very much a rhetoric of colonization, because when we talk about people who don't have a voice, we also have to wonder and question who is doing the silencing. And more often than not are those Western media that want to give voice after they have taken it away. And we are not numbers, Ahmed projects, it's the idea of people have a voice, we just have to listen to them. And so we are not numbers, it's putting in place ways for which Palestinians can tell their own stories. And so Ahmed tonight is going to tell his own story and the story of Gaza.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's actually, Sabrine, it's my honor, it's my privilege to be here with you today. And I have to admit, it wasn't very easy for me to come all this way from London, given the situation I'm living. But I just can't say no to people who want to hear a Palestinian voice. So I couldn't say no. And I thank you all very much for coming here today to listen to me. And I have to say, I'm not a special person. I am just an average Palestinian. I don't have a special story. I'm not extraordinary. All of you are maybe better than me. All of you maybe are more knowledgeable than me. Maybe many of you know more about Palestine than I do. So when I came here, I did not actually plan to talk about anything specific. But maybe I can talk to you about myself, about Palestine, about Gaza, about how I feel. Just a heartfelt talk without any filters, without any planning, let's say. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Ahmed and I'm 29 years old. I was born in 1994 in the Gaza Strip, in a small city in the Gaza Strip. It's called Deir el-Balah. Deir el-Balah is in the south of the Gaza Strip. But right now there is a lot of talks about Wadi Gaza, Valley Gaza, the north and the south. I think many of you heard about that in the news. Israel is instructing people to go from the north to the south. By the south, they mean the south of the valley of Gaza. So I was born there. Deir el-Balah is a Palestinian town. It's a small city. I think there are about 90,000 people who live in Deir el-Balah. And Deir el-Balah is an Arabic word that you can translate it to English as the monastery of Saint George. So it was built after Saint George, and we have a very, very old monastery there called Saint George. It is believed that Saint George was actually buried there in Deir el-Balah, in my city. Deir el-Balah is a very lovely area. It's not like London or Bath. It's not magnificent. It's not full of lights and a huge building. It's my home, and I love it. It's full of palm trees. Deir el-Balah, el-Balah means palm trees. It's full of palm trees. So if you go to a high area in Deir el-Balah, everything you would see is palm trees. Thousands and thousands and thousands of palm trees. It's an agricultural area. So all of the residents are actually farmers, or they used to be farmers. And we have a joke in the Gaza Strip about Deir el-Balah. They say Deir el-Balah is a city where everyone sleeps at 7 p.m. So because if you go to Gaza City, people sleep at 12 or 1 or 2 a.m. But in Deir al-Balah, we sleep very early because we are farmers and we have to wake up very early to go and farm. So this is where I was born, in the center of Deir al-Balah. And my father was also born in the same city, Deir al-Balah, but that was only a few months after the Nakba. My father is 75 years old, and he was born a few months after the Nakba. When my father was born, after the Nakba, and by the way, my family is not originally from Deir al-Balah. So my father's family, they have links to Jaffa. Jaffa is a very, very, very beautiful city. It used to be a very beautiful city. Now it's almost destroyed, and next to it is Tel Aviv, the mighty big Tel Aviv. So my father's family have links to there. They used to live there. My grandmother used to live there. She's from Jaffa. My grandfather used to live there as well with his wife. Then after and my mother came from Beersheba, Bir Saba. Now it's an Israeli city, but my mom came from there, and we are refugees. We are like 70% of the population in Gaza are refugees. They're not from Gaza. They're from cities and towns that were destroyed and ethnically cleansed. Now they're Israeli cities, but they were Palestinian cities. 750,000 Palestinians were driven away from their homes and lands in 1948 and before, and they came to Gaza, the West Bank. And my family and my mother's family were one of these people who had to be displaced from their homes so that Israel is established. Anyway, when my father was born, his grandfather went to the market, Deir al-Balah market, and he wanted to get a doctor to my father to check him after he was born. Then when he was there, and that was in the year 1948, the year of the Nakba, when he was there in the market, Deir al-Balah market, an Israeli airplane just out of nowhere came and it dropped a bomb in the market, killing 150 people there. He was one of them. Deir al-Balah. Deir al-Balah was in the Gaza Strip. At that time, it was not occupied by Israel. At that time, it was just Deir al-Balah, and they were killed. Do you know what the saddest story there is? That not only that 150 people were killed, the saddest story is that if you want to search and go back to this massacre, you will not find any history about it. No one talks about it. Only a few Palestinians in Deir al-Balah said remember the act and wrote about it. But in the Western media, we'll never hear about it. You'll never hear about many, many, many hundreds of other massacres that the Israelis did against the Palestinian people. And then my father had to live his life in Deir al-Balah. My father was very, very smart. He was one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. No exaggeration. Not because he's a father, he's my father. He had a photographic memory. He's 75 years old, and he still, until a month ago, he used to recite all the passages that he studied at elementary school in English. So he would just look at the page and he would just memorize it, remember it forever. He would never forget it. He spoke Hebrew, he spoke English, and he spoke Arabic, and he was very talented, very smart. Unfortunately, he couldn't go to university because of the war. Gaza at that time did not have any university, and then he had to work to support his family. My grandfather died when my father was at a young age. Then my father had to support his family, so he had to work in order to provide for his family, for my aunts and uncles. And this is another sad reality, that when Israel occupied the Gaza Strip in 1967, they destroyed the economy of Gaza, so that all the Palestinians who live in Gaza will have to depend on the Israelis for their livelihood. So you don't have a choice. Either you work in Israel or you don't work, or you starve. And that's the de-development of Gaza that Israel imposed. So my father was one of those hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who had to work in Israel as laborers, as workers, in order to provide for his family. And he kept working in Israel until the year 2000. Anyway, I was born in the year 1994. And then at my early ages, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I would remember that my father would have to wake up every day at 2 a.m. in order to catch a bus to go to Israel to work there. And then he would return at 7 p.m. every day, working day and night in order just to provide for his family. If he doesn't work there, then he can't work. And then he would come every day traumatized of what he is witnessing there in Israel by his boss, by the Israeli soldiers. And all of that was a long time ago, before there was Hamas, Fatah. Or there was Fatah, but there was no Hamas. And then he would come and talk to us about the humiliation, the brutality of the Israeli occupation, of the Israeli soldiers. Without any provocation, every day they would just ask the Palestinian workers to go and strip naked. They would torture them for fun. They would detain them sometimes. My father was detained 5 times for no reason, just precautionary. And then he would come. My mom, I remember when I was only 5 or 6 years old, would spend the last 3 or 4 hours every day before my father arrives, just waiting on the window every day, waiting on the window, just waiting for the moment my father is come, so she's relieved that my father is safe. Because in many occasions, the Israelis would torture or kill the Palestinian workers just like that. And the reason there was an intifada actually in 1987 is that the Israeli killed 6 Palestinian workers with no reason. They just killed them. So my mother was always very scared for my father. My father, I remember some tales that my father told me. And one of them, I heard it when I was only 5 years ago, when I was 5 years old. I can't forget this story. Never. He told me he was talking to his boss, an Israeli one. And this Israeli man told my father, God created only the Israelis as humans, and the rest of the world, they were just animals created to serve the Israelis. And then these people were disgusted with the shapes of these animals, so they asked God to transform them into human-like beings. And that's how you all came to this creation. This is not anti-Semitic. I know that this is not in Judaism. This is not about the Jews. Of course not. But this is some kind of mentality in Israel that exists. They don't see the Palestinian people as humans. And that's why Gallant a few days ago said that we are fighting with the human animals, referring to the Palestinians. So these people don't look at us as humans. We're just animals for them. And if you are dealing with an animal, then you wouldn't have a problem killing them, torture them, detaining them, imposing collective punishment and siege and settlements, and it doesn't matter for them. And then in the year 2000, I was only 6 years old. And that's where the second intifada erupted. And then the border had to close, and the Israelis wouldn't allow the Palestinian workers to go and work there in Israel. So my father was jobless then. So he had to buy a car, like tens of thousands of Palestinians, and to work as a taxi driver. So now we also have another joke about Gaza, is that everyone is a taxi driver in Gaza because there are no other jobs. No other jobs. You just have to buy a taxi and work as a taxi driver, or if you work for the government as an employee. So my father had to work there like day and night working. Anyway, and that was when I was 6 years old. That's when I started to notice things that go around me. What happened in the year 2000 when I was 6 years old happened the second intifada. Second intifada means the second uprising, in which the Palestinians got fed up with the situation and they started to protest against the occupation. And I know many people are not familiar with the word occupation. They don't know that the Palestinian people are living under military occupation for the past 57 years. So there is no two sides here. There is people who live under occupation, military occupation, And there is the Israeli army that controls the lives of the Palestinians. And the Palestinians got sick of that. We got fed up with that. We wanted to have our own country, our own liberty, our own freedom. So they rose against the occupation. They started the uprising. And that's where I started to gather what's going on around me. I was only 6 years old. And my early memories of that time was like this. Every day when I walked to school, the only thing I would see is the protesters. Another scene is a funeral for a Palestinian killed by Israel. Another scene of an Israeli tank invading Deir al-Balah, my city, killing people. The sounds that I remember as I was 6 years old is the sounds of the Apache, the helicopters, gunshot, rifle, M16s, Kalashnikovs, and all of that. And I wrote about that for We Are Not Numbers, by the way. The Palestinians in Gaza, who are about my age, when we think of our childhood, we don't remember playing in the playground or going to do football or going to the park or watching a cinema. We don't have a cinema in Gaza. We don't have playgrounds. The only thing I would remember in my childhood is scenes of martyrs, the scenes of people killed, people walking in crutches, whatever that word is, and the sounds of the weaponry. So when we were young, we could distinguish between the voice of the Apache or the F-16, the sounds of the rifles of M16 or a Kalashn or the guns. We could distinguish. I would be sitting at home and I'd say, yeah, that's an Apache. I was only 6 or 7 years old. I don't remember that I was playing with my friends. Well, of course we were playing, but these are the memories that are dominant in our memory. My brother Ayman would go every day and then he would come back terrified by the scenes that he saw. One day he came back and he was terrified. Ayman was 4 years older than me. One day, and I can't remember, I can't forget this day. He came home and he was trembling, terrified. Ayman, what happened? He would say, I was walking in the street and there was a tank that killed 6 of my friends, kids, kids. He was very scared. What happened? There was just a tank and it was shooting every Palestinian who passes the road in the middle of Deir al-Balah, in the middle of my city, not Israel. Who were killed? Kids, 13 and 14 years old. All of them are students in my school, just like that. Do we know their names now? Do we remember their stories? No, these people are not mentioned in the media. The only thing I remember not the only thing, some of what I remember in my childhood is Muhammad al-Durra, who was killed while his father was hugging him, and that was recorded. That was recorded live on TV. The Israelis shot him while he was hugged by his father, and they killed him and injured his father. Another name, Iman Hajjo. She was from Deir al-Balah, from my city, and her mother was carrying her. She was only 3 months old. An Israeli tank shot her, killed the baby while she was in the arms of her mother. These are the stories that I remember from my childhood. Then I would grow up, go to the school, every day a protest, closing the schools, getting back home, Apache, snipers, gunshot. That's what I remember. But it was okay. I did not lose anyone of my family back then. I could survive. Days passed. Okay, we're lucky. We did not lose anyone from my family back then. One day, my brother was gone missing, and my mother collapsed. He must have been killed by now. Our neighbors came home. They said, "We saw an Israeli man killing your son," to my mother. My mother collapsed, and then it was a lie. These are the memories that we have. Memories of protest, of killing, of Apache, of Intifada, of guns. That's what I remember. And then days passed. The second Intifada ended. more than 3,000 Palestinians killed, many, many, many thousands injured, many incursions, many tanks going to my home, my neighborhood. Eventually, Israel in 2006, they evacuated Gaza. I said, oh my God, that's a happy story. And by the way, when there was occupation in Gaza, when there was an army in Gaza, I just remember one story. My sister was going to university in 2005 or 2004. Then one day she came home and her bag was full of blood. My mom was so scared. What happened, Dua? And then Dua, my sister, told my mother that she was in a taxi going from Deir Balah to Gaza for university. Then there was an Israeli tank sitting stationed in the middle of the road. Then it started shooting at people. The man next to her in the car got shot in the head and he died. And she came with the blood in her bag. And she was terrified. Then we asked my sister to stay in Gaza, never to come back to Deir al-Balah because it's closer to her university. Then the Intifada ended and Israel withdrew from Gaza. Said, yes, finally, we can now move freely in Gaza. But soon after that, the blockade started. Israel wasn't happy with the election in Gaza and they decided to do a blockade on Gaza, a collective punishment, according to the UN. So they were not happy that Hamas won the election, so they imposed a siege on all of the Gaza Strip. Everyone, women, kids, children, everyone is under siege. And I was only 10 years, I think, or 11 years old. And then where it got serious for me. There was no food, no water, no gas, no electricity, nothing at all that is allowed to enter Gaza. I remember my father, every day he would go to our land and start to collect some wood so that he can make a fire to cook food for us. Every day in the morning he would do that. They sent us back hundreds of years back. And then every day I would watch the TV. I would see the line of breaking news in the bottom. Now the number of Palestinian patients who died because Israel denied them to travel for treatment is one. Other day 2, and 3, and 4, 5, 6. They reached 500, 600. Every day the Palestinians would literally die at the border waiting for a permit from Israel to allow them to receive a treatment. They were killed. All the factories in Gaza were closed. All the farmers stopped working because there are no equipment. Israel then started, when there was a lot of pressure mounting on them, they would count how many calories all the Palestinians Gaza have, and they would only allow the amount of calories that the Palestinians need to survive, only survive. That's according to them, not us, by the way. No electricity, no gas for cooking, no oil. My father was a taxi driver, so how can he work if there is no oil? So my father would put vegetable oil in the car in order to start it, and it worked. It really did, and that's how he was working to earn us, to provide us living. And then in 2008, Israel launched its massive onslaught on Gaza aggression. That day, I was on the ninth grade. I was at school. And then I was waiting to do an exam. I was very anxious for the exam. I did not study well then. And I was waiting for the class bell to ring. And suddenly, I heard loud bombing around the school. I thought it's Yom Al Qiyamah, afterlife, Judgment Day. That's how I felt back then. Very, very loud bombs all around our school. And then I looked at the sky and I saw smoke and fire and screams. I was very, very scared. That was the first time I ever get so close to bombing. It was so loud, so fierce. So I ran away immediately from school. When I was going back from school to my home, what I saw is people killed in the street, body parts, blood everywhere. I went home and then I listened to Olmert, the Israeli Prime Minister, saying that we successfully targeted 300 government buildings. We killed 320 people in just 31 seconds. Was very happy. Killed 300 Palestinians in just 32 seconds or 31 seconds. And then the war started. It lasted for 31 days. And every day I will watch the news. What we see in the news, the number of people killed every day. It was 300, it started from 300, then increased 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 1,000, 1,001, 1,002 people. 1,002 people were killed in that war. How many people injured? 10,000. How many houses demolished? 50,000 houses demolished. And these are what I remember, the numbers. Numbers of people killed, number of people injured, number of people of houses demolished. It's all numbers. And that's in the Palestinian media. In the Western media, it's just statistics. Or worse, and, the media in the West would say Palestinian terrorists killed. Women and children, they are just terrorists. Israel is launching a war against Hamas in Gaza. And that's what people have in the West, the impression that Palestinians are terrorists. And then the war ended. We went back to our life. Then in 2012, another war in Gaza. But that one was fast. 150 and 170 people were killed. And every day in the news, we'd hear the number of people killed and injured. And then in 2014, another war. It lasted for 51 days. That was horror. I was there in Gaza. I was terrified at that time. Bombing everywhere, did not stop. But that war was different for me. It was very different for me. Because at that war, I lost my brother and 6 of my friends. And that was the first time that the war affects me personally, taking away one of my brothers. I was devastated. I was only 19 years old. I was devastated. My brother was my friend. We grew up together, and then suddenly he's just gone, just like that. And he was also like his hand was cut and his leg was cut, and then I saw his face all in blood. That moment I can't forget. And my friends, they were buried under the rubble for 7 days, 8 days actually. And then when they retrieved their body after 8 days, when there was a truce, their bodies were decomposed. So I had to carry my friend to walk in his funeral. I couldn't stand the smell of his body. That's how I buried my friend. The war ended, but I was never the same. I was too depressed. I would spend my time at the graveyard, literally every day. I would go there, stand next to my brother's grave, and cry. But then a friend of mine reached out to me on Facebook and she said, Ahmed, how do you feel? You lost your brother. I told her, okay, I'm fine. She said, no, tell me something real. Told her the truth. She said, write about it. So I wrote a story about my brother in English. Then I published this story. This story it was read by many people. And then they came to me, they told me, Ahmed, we read your story. We were moved by your story. And we love you and we love Palestine. And that was a changing point for me. For the first time, I hear some people care about the Palestinians, that we are not just numbers. We have stories. So we decided to create the platform of We Are Not Numbers, in which we train writers from Gaza to tell their stories in English and share it with the world. Why we started We Are Not Numbers is because we wanted to show the world that behind these numbers that you see in the news are stories that are worthy of being told. There are people out there who want to be heard. And we wanted to share these stories because I lost one brother and was devastated. So we did not want to have more wars. We wanted the world to look and to notice Gaza and to prevent other wars from happening. And all of these dreams, naive dreams, stupid dreams, not stupid, they're good dreams, but we live in a different world, difficult world. Anyway, We Are Not Numbers was a success, and I said, now people are reading our stories. The international community will not allow the Israelis to do this again, and all of that. Then Israel launched another war in 2019, another war in 2021, another war in 2022, then another war in 2023. This war. And the word war does not actually do us justice because it's an aggression, an offensive that Israel launched in Gaza. This war is so different from all other wars that happened to Gaza. It's very different. Because in the past, when Israel wants to bomb a home, they would give a warning to the Palestinians who live there. Evacuate your home. They give them 30 seconds or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to evacuate. And that saved thousands of lives in Gaza. But in this war, they started not giving warning to civilians who live in the houses. They would just bomb their homes. In on the 21 or the 20th of October, my sister, I have 5 sisters. All of them are married and they live outside. They don't live in my home. So one of them, a mosque next to her home was bombed. So her house was partially damaged. So it was not fit for living. She was very scared, so just decided to come to my home with her kids to stay with us. Another sister, she lives in the east, which is a dangerous area. She said, no, I will come and stay with my family house. My sister, Wala, and her 4 kids came. My sister, Aya, got her home bombed, and she lost, and she had 3 kids, and she brought them home. Another sister, Ala, she has 5 children, and she came to stay with us. My other sister, she also came to stay with my home. She has 4 kids. And my cousin also came to my home because it's safe. Because my home is in the center of Deir al-Balah. And Deir al-Balah is a very safe area. For example, the former Prime Minister, Sharon, used to call Deir al-Balah Deir Shalom, which is the city of peace, the peaceful city. My city is very peaceful. And it's in the south of Wadi Gaza. So all of my sisters thought my house is the safest area in the Gaza Strip. So they came with their children. Even my uncle who lives in Gaza came to my home to live in my home with all of his children and his wife. My home was very crowded. But we said, it's okay, crowded, okay, but it's safe. The safest area in the Gaza Strip. We will be safe with each other. During war, we want to be with each other. All the family want to be with each other. It's tough time. We have to stay together. And then I would call them every day. How are you? We're fine. We're okay. We don't have food and water. We don't have fresh water. The situation is very difficult, but we are together. We're safe with each other. All the families together. They were okay. They were fine. And then on 22nd of October, and they were sleeping in my home. There was my father in my home, my 3 sisters. The 4th sister found it very crowded area, so she decided to go home. And then my uncle thought that the situation in Gaza is bitter and the bombing is everywhere. It's not safe anymore in Deir al-Balah, so left. So in my home there was my father, my older brother and his wife and his children, my other brother, my 3 sisters and all of their children, Wala and her 4 children, Ala and her 5 children, Aya and her 3 children. All of them were sleeping in my home. 5 a.m. when Israel bombed my home. Just like that. Why? No reason. Were there militants there? No. Were there rockets there? No. What's the reason? Just like that. They felt like bombing my home with an F-16, with 2 missiles of F-16. Each missile is a ton of weight of explosions. and they turned my home into ashes. And my family were all killed. My father, my two brothers, my three sisters, and 14 nieces and nephews, and my cousin. My 14 nieces and nephews, all of them were born after Israel launched its collective punishment of siege. All of them saw only in Gaza wars, destruction, collective punishment, lack of food, lack of water, lack of movement, blockade, wars, horror, trauma, and then they all die together. And and the saddest part is many of them are still under rubble. Many of them did not come in whole. They were in body parts. One of my relatives went to my home, the area, and he got a trash bag. He started to collect pieces of meat of my nieces and nephews, of my brothers and sisters, and put them all in one bag and gave them to my sister. He told her, "These are the remains of your brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews." Just like that. And I heard that in the news. And I was devastated, to be honest. I can't say that I was too strong. I was devastated. And and yeah, this is my story. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.